serious?
Oh, you can see it's hard. Oh! It's a boy! I knew it! I knew it! It's a boy! Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It has been the longest time since I have sat down and filmed or even just got a second to sit down. This is, I don't know if you can hear, but our little baby has entered the world. He's actually 5 weeks old already. It's taken me so long to do like a birth story or birth vlog. I have just had so much on my plate. Parenthood alone is just so much to take on, but the entrance that our little man has had into this world has not been the easiest, and I will definitely touch on that a little bit more in a different video. I think I'm just going to stick to the birth vlog in this video, but if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, you will know that our little man has been incredibly sick and has fought, and has fought some serious health issues. Oh my gosh, there he goes. I'll be back. So this is our little, well, not so little anymore, but this is our little man. Oh, dribbling. Say hi. Say hello. Hi, bud. So I think I'll start from the beginning. I feel like I have so much to touch on. It all started on the 11th of August at like 4 a.m. the 11th of August at 4 a.m. and I started getting my contractions, and they weren't too bad. Everyone's asked the question, was it like endo pain? And yes, it was. So it was just like really, really, really bad period pain or endometriosis pain. And they came on so quickly at like 4 minutes apart. And they did start to get a bit closer together and for like a bit longer periods of time. So they were like 3 minutes apart, some were 2 minutes apart, and they were going for like 45 seconds. At 9:30 a.m. in the morning, I had some leakage. Now, if you've watched some of my other YouTube videos or follow my Living with Endometriosis page, you'll know I speak so openly about my pregnancy on that page. You'll know every little detail. Nothing is TMI, everything is on that page. And you'll know that I did have some leakage throughout my pregnancy. And you'll also know that I did have something called B-strep, and it was caught in my urine, so that means that the B-strep was found in my bladder. B-strep can be really dangerous and complicated if it gets passed to your baby, and B-strep is normally passed to your baby through labor. You are given antibiotics though to kind of stop that transfer from happening, but you do need to get onto it quite quickly. So I had leakage at 9:30 a.m. I called the midwives and I said, look, I'm having some leakage. Obviously, because I've had leakage before, the midwife that was on the phone didn't really think much of it, and said, look, like, it could just be a little bit of leakage. It's not necessarily your waters. Obviously, you trust the midwives. Like, you're putting all your trust in them. So I kind of carried on about my day. The contractions were getting a bit stronger. And then it was at around 11:30 again, I had leakage. So that was worrying. I started to have a shower. I pretty much called the midwife again and said, look, my contractions are like, I'm breathing through them, because she told me the first time I called, if you're breathing through them, you're fine. But I was really worried about the second lot of leakage that I had. And then I also started to bleed a bit. So what they kind of call, I hate this word so much, the bloody show started to happen. Called her and she said, look, I still don't think it's your waters, but if you're really worried, you can come in. Obviously I was worried because I knew I needed to get this antibiotics for the B strep that I had, because yeah, the complications that can happen to bub if they get B strep is ridiculous. So that was all that was on my mind. So Blake and I went into the hospital straight away. They hooked me up to the monitor to check baby's heart rate and movements, and that was all completely fine. So I think going by that, they were just like not even worried about it, but they left me waiting for a few hours before they even checked my water. And I asked them, like, are you going to check my water? But a doctor has to do it, and there wasn't any doctors available at that moment. So waited a few more hours. I think they could have checked my waters at around 4 p.m. and they had broken. So I went from around 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. without any antibiotics, which stressed me out completely. And the doctor said, we need to put you on antibiotics straight away and we are inducing you. So I had a rupture in my water, is what they're saying. I had a rupture on the top. So little man has kicked his feet too hard or something and actually ruptured it himself. So yeah, we had a leakage and it was leaking down the side, and that's what started my waters. Being induced was not something I wanted to happen, but that's just what had to be done. He was in there for too long without antibiotics, so they needed to get antibiotics in straight away and speed up the process. So they hooked me up to the IV to induce me, and the show pretty much started from there. That kicked in really strongly straight away. At this point, my contractions were getting stronger even before they were inducing me, but I could breathe through them. So I was like, this is a breeze, labor's easy. And I was like, this is just like an endo flare-up. Oh my God, little did I know what I was about to be in for. They started the IV and it kicked in really quickly, actually. They also checked me to see if I was dilated, and I was feeling really confident that I had dilated. Little did I know, I was not dilated at all. So to hear that was really disheartening, because I thought that I was progressing because I had been in contractions for so long. But yeah, I hadn't progressed, I hadn't dilated at all. My cervix was soft, but it wasn't dilated. That alone, the actual dilation checks were quite painful for me. I'm going to be as real, as honest as I can in this video. Please remember that everyone's labor story is different. Everyone's pain tolerance is different. What they go through is so different. No birth story is the same. So please don't be scared off by anything that I experienced, or just your birth story is your birth story. You can't plan your birth story, I've realized. Everyone's like, have a birth plan ready. There was nothing. I didn't want to be induced. I wanted to be able to have like baths and even have an option of a water birth. But that was all, like, all of those plans were cancelled within minutes. They did also then decide that they needed to break my waters fully, only because I had a rupture, so my waters hadn't fully broken. And because I wasn't dilating, they thought that if they had to scrape some membranes off as well and then break my waters. So once they did that, they were hoping that I'd progress a lot quicker. With the actual breaking of the waters, it was very painful for me. Some women say it's not painful at all. Even the dilation checks, they're not really painful for everyone. But in my situation with my condition, I felt quite a lot of pain. So I just squeezed Blake's hand and just said, Like, I was just screaming. Like, yeah, it was a tough time, the breaking of the waters. Once the waters had broken, they also realized that our little man had actually done a poo in the womb, so that is a sign of that he was a bit distressed. So they really wanted to speed things up. They pumped the IV to run even quicker, and it pretty much took off from there. So I had asked for the gas by this point. The gas worked really well for a few hours and I could really push through it. After that, it just got a bit more intense, especially because they were really upping the inducing. So I then asked for the morphine shot, which personally for me, that didn't do anything. It didn't take the edge off. I just feel like it was so pointless, but I wanted to try the steps and anything to avoid the epidural. So that was my thing. Going into labor, I didn't want to be induced and I didn't want the epidural. And that's obviously not how it turned out. So once I had the morphine shot, that didn't do too much either. The pain was getting a lot more intense, especially because everything was just happening so quick and I was so tired by this point. I wasn't getting many breaks in between my contractions and it just got too much. And then I asked, what are my options? What's the next pain relief option? So after the gas, the morphine, it is the epidural. So I was petrified. I looked at Blake and I just said, am I making the right decision? Do I do this? I wasn't progressing quick enough either. So I knew I just couldn't, I physically couldn't handle the pain for any longer, and they pretty much got the epidural set up straight away for me. I just read too many things, too many horror stories about the epidural. Obviously, when you look up things like that, you only hear the bad things, you don't really hear the good things. And yes, there are risks to the epidural, but you kind of just, when you're in that moment and you are desperate for pain relief, you're like, just do it. Like, let's just do it. So I had the epidural at, I think it was like 1 a.m. I had the epidural, and let me tell you, it was the best thing I ever did. Oh my gosh, best thing I ever did. I felt instant relief. The actual process of the epidural, I was scared about too, like pain-wise, which I didn't feel any pain at all. The local went in, that was nothing compared to what I had just been feeling. And I felt great pretty much instantly. Once all that was happening, I was able to relax. Blake and I were just able to chill out. I got a bit of rest. I did vomit quite a lot during labor. I vomited throughout my whole pregnancy though. So vomiting was just a thing I had my whole pregnancy. So vomiting during labor was obviously not even, like, I wasn't surprised about it, but the pain went away instantly with that epidural and it just felt amazing. Another plus note was I asked the midwife before I said yes to the epidural, I said, am I gonna feel the dilation checks if I get the epidural? And she goes, no. She's like, you literally might feel a bit of pressure and that was it. Once I had that answer, I was like, let's do this, because it was the dilation and the breaking of the waters and all that just tipped me over the edge. And I was like, no, I need more pain relief. I need the epidural. Once that happened, Blake and I were able to sleep for a little bit. The nurse would come in during the night and check me, as in like monitor me and Bub. So that was nice. Little update. Oh, contraction. I'm trying to laugh through them, but it's very painful. So we are at the hospital now because I have been having contractions since like 4 a.m. It's now 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They've kind of been like 4 to 3 minutes apart. manageable. I can breathe through it. This lighting is so bad. I vomited, had a bit of diarrhea, TMI. What else? Then I had a bit of leakage and a little bit of blood. So we're just here getting everything checked. They're gonna see if my waters have broken, and that's where we're at for now. Very tired. Bub's moving fine, his heart rate's fine, but we're just gonna check everything else. Okay, so a lot has happened since I checked in last. Turns out my water broke at like 9:30 in the morning when I had leakage. So because I had B-strep, I needed to be put on to a antibiotics straight away. I had B-strep in my bladder, so then they needed to actually also induce me because I was not getting really anywhere with my contractions. I hadn't dilated at all, so I've on the drip for inducing. They're definitely getting a lot stronger and a bit closer together. But we're gonna try and go for as long as possible without anything. We're gonna try the gas first, and then after I'll try the morphine, and then if not, I will opt for the epidural. But so far, we're doing okay. This lighting, I mean, not flattering, but this is labor. Easy into it. Oh, maybe not. Oh, okay, starting. Oh. Oh.
Breathe.
Oh.
That's it. Past halfway.
Oh.
That's it.
Oh. Oh.
That's it.
Oh.
Almost finished.
Oh. Oh. What the hell? This is the worst.
You are?
Yeah.
Keep going. Almost finished. That's it.
What's in going in? Oh. What are you doing? Oh, you do look pretty crazy over there. So I got the epidural at 1 a.m. And then, so that was already the 12th of August because it was 1 a.m. And then the midwife pretty much came in and said, look, you're going to be here for a really long time. You're definitely not going to be having a baby by the morning, so you'll probably be here like late afternoon into the night time is probably when you'll deliver. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to be here a long time, let's get some sleep. And then she came in, she said she was going to check me again at around 6:30 a.m. or 6 a.m. She came in and I was fully dilated, and she was just in so much shock. She was like, you really proved me wrong. I cannot believe you are 10 centimeters dilated. And I was just like, Blake, wake up. Like, I'm dilated. We were all in so much shock. So obviously I was like 10 centimeters dilated, it's time to push, like let's do this. The midwife then said they wanted to give me an extra hour just to allow him to drop a little bit more. And I was like, okay, an extra hour, sweet. I then actually started to feel a bit of pain. So the epidural was starting to wear off. That was very worrying to me. I said, look, I'm starting to feel pain. Can we get a top up of the epidural? They said no, that they couldn't, because if they were to top me up with the epidural again, I wouldn't know when to push, because you need to push when you're contracting. So it was good that I was starting to feel like slight bit of pain. The pain came on so quickly out of nowhere, and I said, look, I really need a top up of the epidural or something. I'm in so much pain, or I need to start pushing now. I cannot wait an hour. So I think they gave me half an hour, and I said I need to start pushing because this pain is just like, I need to get this baby out. I had also spiked a temperature during that whole process of me the epidural wearing off. So they also needed to do a blood test just to test that and give me more antibiotics because I had spiked a fever in labor. I started pushing. I started pushing at around 7. I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. They had me on stirrups. They had Blake pulling my legs back. They had a midwife pulling my legs back. They had a doctor in there. And it was just not progressing. He was just not able to come through. He was not dropping enough. It just wasn't progressing like it should have been, and I was so tired, and the pain was just so incredibly real because I had gone from no pain all of a sudden to so much pain because everything had worn off. So I felt everything. I could feel pain everywhere, and I was not getting a break because obviously your contractions are a lot closer together and they go for a lot longer when you're closer and when you start pushing. So that was my breaking point. I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. I don't know how many times I said to Blake, I can't do this anymore. And I was just screaming in his face. And I will never forget it. It is something he will never forget. Oh, I know I'm going to cry in this video. This is ridiculous. So I was just trying and pushing and pushing and pushing my hardest, but he just didn't want to come through. He was struggling to come through, poor little guy. I pushed for a total of 2 hours, and then it got to the point where there was just doctors coming in. There was like 3 doctors. I think I had 2 midwives, and it got to the point where little man's heart rate was just going a little bit too crazy. So he was becoming super distressed in there. They decided that they were going to do vacuum or forceps, or if they were going to try vacuum first and then go to the forceps. But his heart rate was just going too crazy, and yeah, they just didn't want to risk it. So they then were also thinking an emergency C-section. Oh don't cry. The story's too traumatic. Yeah, I feel the same way, bud. So they were, then getting me ready for an emergency C-section, which you hear that and you just start to freak out. Blake and I were just so freaked out. They were just getting the papers ready. You have to sign everything. I'm contracting in pain and screaming and signing what I feel like was my life away. And then it was time to get me ready for theatre, and this happened so quickly. So they topped up my epidural and I felt nothing after that. It was just fantastic. But it was also the scariest time of my life. And for Blake as well, it was the scariest time of our life. We didn't know the state or the condition of our baby. We just knew that the doctors and the midwives were working as fast as they could, and it just happened within minutes where they were rushing me down to theatre. They were scrubbing Blake in. It was just happening so quickly. So they got me into theatre, and it was time to try the vacuum first. At this point, Blake wasn't even in the room with me yet. They were still scrubbing him in, but they had me on stirrups ready to go. I obviously felt nothing I didn't feel anything from the waist down. So they needed to put a local anesthetic in as well in my area, because I also needed to be cut. So I got an episiotomy. So they needed to cut me just to allow more room for him to come through, because he wasn't coming through. Also to get the vacuum on his little head. So it was just so scary. They got the vacuum on. They were only going to allow 3 suctions. If not, they were going straight to the cesarean, emergency cesarean. So they weren't even doing the forceps anymore. That was out of the picture. It was vacuum, only 3 times, emergency cesarean. Because he was just, his condition wasn't doing the greatest. They did the first vacuum and nothing happened. Blake was then rushing in for the second vacuum. They did the second vacuum and our little guy's head came out. I still need to push in this process, by the way. The vacuum, they don't just vacuum him out, I still need to push. So the nurse was feeling for my contractions on my tummy and telling me when I was contracting so I could push. We were waiting for the third contraction, so the final one, to finally get him out. His head had only come out in the second contraction. My contractions had kind of gone a little bit further apart, so his head was out with no oxygen for a bit too long. They then needed to do the third suction, and that was obviously the final suction that they had wanted to do. But our little guy's shoulders actually got stuck, so he was out for a lot longer with no oxygen. And then he came out on the 4th suction of the vacuum. Sorry. He came out on the 4th suction. I didn't bring a tissue. And he came out with no oxygen and no heartbeat. Oh God. Making mommy cry. So yeah, he was born and not alive. They put him on me pretty much instantly. They put him on me, and it was for like the shortest amount of time. And they yelled at Blake to cut the cord. They just said, cut the cord, cut the umbilical cord. And he cut it, obviously because it was such an emergency situation that they needed him to work on him. They hadn't even clamped the umbilical cord. So I had so many midwives, about 7 midwives and doctors around me. Blake cut the umbilical cord so quickly that because I hadn't clamped it, all blood just splattered everywhere. I could see blood on everyone's face around me. As well as I had it on my face, Blake had it on his face, and I just freaked out. And they, the midwife that was next to me just screamed and yelled, hit the emergency button. And she yelled, hit the emergency button, hit the emergency button, hit the emergency button about 5 or 6 times. And all of a sudden, a team of like 11, 12 doctors just rushed in, and they took him away from Blake and I, and he was in the corner just trying to get suction and oxygen, and it was just wild. And obviously Blake and I could not do anything but just sit there. We just sat there. Well, I laid there and Blake sat there. Every kind of 20 seconds or whatever it was, a nurse or a midwife would come over and tell us, okay, we are getting a heartbeat. Okay, we are getting some oxygen into him. Okay, we have a pulse. Or it was just so traumatic. And I finally Blake and I finally heard a little cry, and we just never forget it. You'll never forget it. God, I shouldn't have done this. Oh dear. So it was just the biggest sign of relief, and they finally could bring him over to us, and we got a little family moment finally. But he was just a fighter from the beginning, an absolute fighter from the beginning. And my mum obviously wanted to be on FaceTime for this. She obviously wasn't, because it was just too traumatic. But she had been in contact with Blake, and they knew that they were taking me to theatre, so she actually came to the hospital, and she was just waiting in the foyer. She knew I was going into theatre, and she actually heard the code blue emergency mum and baby scream or call through the hospital, and she saw the team of doctors and nurses and midwives running into me and the little one, and all she knew was that it was an emergency for mum and baby, and there was a code blue, and she screamed. She just cried and screamed in the hallway, and no one could tell her what was going on. And it was just, to say it was traumatizing would be an understatement. It was the absolute hardest day of my life, as well as poor Blake. Well, we thought that was the hardest day of our life. Little did we know what was to come with how sick our little guy got after. Hey, bud. It's just been absolutely crazy. Hey, bud. Hey. So our little man was officially born, hello, on the 12th of August at 9:49 a.m. And his name is Easton Harris Brooker. I just realized I hadn't said his name this whole video. I've been calling him Little Man. And it has just been wild. And also in this video is a little kind of intro into how parenting started in the first week or two. After that, life just got really crazy with how sick our little man became, and that is for the next video, because this video has already gone for too long.
Okay.
Hey, look at you. Bless you. Bless you. We are just thanking all of our lucky stars and prayers that things worked out, and he is an absolute fighter. An absolute fighter, and Blake was the most incredible birthing partner I could have asked for, and he just pulled me through some of the toughest times of our life. Literally pulled us through it. I could have never have done it without him. There is just not enough words to describe what an amazing birth partner he was, and how strong he kept me, and how positive, and in the darkest times. And you know, we all need to remember, I guess, even as women, that men feel it just as much as we do. I am just so proud and in awe of how he handled labor with me, and he has been the absolute best daddy. I couldn't do too much, so he was doing so much. He was doing everything in the hospital. He was changing the nappies, he was dressing him, I was literally just breastfeeding and just trying to recover that first night in the hospital. I just wanted to thank everyone so much for all the messages, the calls, the welcoming of our beautiful little boy to the world. It's been so surreal, and just the support that we've had around us, especially with him being so sick and such a traumatic entrance into the world that he's had. The support and love and the prayers that we've had have been incredible. Thank you so much for watching this video and for all the love and support. We are just so overwhelmed with so much love and support.